In part 2 of my conversation with Amanda Green and Branden Jacobs-Jenkins, we continue to dish the dish on demystifying compensation models, holding on to inspiration and more. Amanda Green is a Grammy-nominated, 2-time Tony-nominated lyricist and composer, and the first female president of the Dramatists Guild. Her Broadway shows include Mr. Saturday Night, Hands on a Hard Body, Bring It On, and High Fidelity. Branden Jacobs-Jenkins is a Pulitzer Prize winning, 2-time Tony Award winning playwright and vice president of the Dramatists Guild. His plays include Purpose, Appropriate, The Comeuppance, and an Octoroon. Here we go.
You guys, can you slate for me?
Yes, I will.
Ah! That's what you don't want a slate to do. Sorry, go ahead. Give me a slate.
That's fine.
That's so funny.
That's good.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
I'm so happy to be back with you, returning for what we're calling the wrap-up of Season 6. It's Episode 6, Part 2 of our conversation that we started this whole season with. Amanda Green, Madam President, and Branden Jacobs-Jenkins, Mr. Vice President. He refuses to be called that, but I do it anyway, because it's me. And I'm in charge.
Madam
So,
Treasurer.
Here we go. Madam Treasurer, right. So we wanted to come back to talk to you because there has been a lot of conversation at the Guild lately about this idea of financial literacy and how important it is for writers to know more than they might think they do about the economics of being a writer and all of the things that is entailed. So, Amanda, I'd love to start with you. Thoughts you have about what you wish people knew?
Well, I'll include myself, but we have this culture as theater writers of not knowing, of, you'll be taken care of. You don't need to know. You keep your eye on the artistic work. Everything else will be taken care of. And also of being told, frankly, directly and indirectly, that we should feel lucky and grateful that our shows are being put on, even though we employ hundreds of people. And we're often asked to be a team player, and that in order to be not difficult and a team player, we should be willing and ready to do whatever it takes, even if it harms us and our wallet, to make sacrifices and to do lots of work not in our job description to make the show happen. And we've been having so many conversations, and we want to disavow theater writers and to, Branden is always saying it, to own how important we are to this art form. You can't put on a musical unless there's a musical that's written. Right. You can't have a play with no play written by the playwright. So that's why it's important for us, again, I speak for myself, to not be the person who's it'll be taken care of. I just need to be an artist. I'm not good about these things. It's more than I can understand. I went to college. I don't know. I'm a pretty bright person. I'm not great, but I can figure out the basics. And it's important for us to own it and to take responsibility for our well-being and to share with each other what we know, what's been happening to us. We can't collectively bargain, but we can share our stories. And the more we know, we're siloed as writers. We work alone, each on our own projects, and often we're experiencing the same thing at the same time, side by side, and we don't know it until after the fact. And that's one of the reasons the Dramatists Guild is so important, because we're in a room talking about what's happening, and we're like, me too. What did you do? Well, this happened to me. Oh, well, when I tried that, then I got that.
And you become empowered by knowing more about what kind of agency you can take.
Absolutely.
Right. Branden.
Sorry, what was the question? Ditto everything. Exactly. What's your name? But ditto everything Amanda's saying, because it's so funny. The three of us are just constantly in conversation just because of Guild work. It's hilarious to try to pretend that we're not, several years deep into conversation about these issues. So
not
it's
pretending, just trying to
not pretending.
Share it.
Yes, exactly. How to let someone into what's been an ongoing and to me very inspiring, very fruitful wrestling with colleagues that I have not had, again, like by myself with my laptop. I'm not thinking about these issues,
Right.
but the minute you hear it's happening, everyone else, you go, there's something, it's endemic to the field, and it's time we sort of outed it and talked about it and stopped being afraid to talk about it, because that silence is what keeps people confused and kind of put down. But in terms of financial literacy, the great Marcia Norman used to say that the only person who really looks out for playwrights is other playwrights, and which is, I think, quite true. Just even the way like rehearsal rooms go, it's like everyone gets an assistant, but the writer. Designers all have each other's, actors all have each other, but the writer's just sitting there twiddling their thumbs, making no money. So there's something kind of very profound about that. And I do think that what I've noticed over the years, especially, is a lot of young writers reaching out to me for advice that, to me, I'm like, why isn't your agent giving you this advice? They're actually getting 5% of your income. Why don't you know what your 10%? Yeah, like, why don't you know what that thing means in your contract? Or like, what do you mean you started rehearsals without a contract signed? And like, what do you mean you haven't been paid? These things where I'm like, there's like a lag happening here. And I think about how the guilds historically were about the kind of skilled craftsmen in the village coming together to protect that knowledge, enhance that knowledge, pass it on, And I really do think that the Guild, to me, has become more necessary than ever to correct this. Because I think I was just reading something today about how last season, Broadway season, was the highest grossing and the most well-attended, and I don't know a single writer who benefited from that news. Right? Or like, a month or two ago, they're complaining about how the $1 million tax credit went away. Don't know a single writer who benefited from that tax credit, right? So I'm sitting here going like, we're like these weird ghosts in the machine, right? But there's so much economic news about this. How much of what's happening in Broadway is owned by private equity. Like there's real world things at stake and that depend on the work we do in the privacy of our own homes with our own imaginations. And yet, again, we're constantly infantilized and told we should be so grateful that anyone cares, when actually we're not like kids with crayons. We're people who are super trained. We have expertise in every department. We have to be able to cast. We have to be able to help a director when they're stuck. We have to be able to lead a design team. Like, these are real hard skills.
Marketing.
Yeah, and it's about more than just putting a pen to paper. Like, we're building the game board that every single person plays and benefits from,
So a few questions have come up since the first episode, mostly from me, that I wanted to take the opportunity to ask you both. Yeah. And it really goes back to understanding from a fundamental level the idea of how writers get paid or don't get paid. So there's a certain terminology we've used, amortization, being paid on the gross, commissions, not getting paid at all, not having a contract. And I'd love for you to talk to any listener who doesn't know any of these terms, or as if they don't know the terms, to give them a little insight. For example, let's start with what the idea of being paid on the gross means, and where have you seen that mostly happen?
Again, the important difference between a dramatist and, let's say, a screenwriter, and this is something that I guess happened in the early 20th century, and here we all are, we retain the copyrights to our work. So if you're a screenwriter, you're literally selling the thing you make to someone else, right, that they can do whatever they want with.
Your work for hire.
Your work for hire. You're given a lot of things. Money's paid into an insurance fund for you. Different thing. But you, at the end of your life, ultimately own nothing that you've done. Right? Everything you own lives in a vault somewhere in Warner Brothers. And that's the experience of your life.
And anybody can rewrite it or
anyone
do
can
whatever
rewrite
they
it. They
want.
can even put your name on things you didn't write.
Wow.
They can take your name off the thing and then give it something. They can do whatever they want because they paid you for it.
Right.
So you've given up the rights
Right.
to that, your intellectual property. Whereas what we do, what novelists do, and what poets do, I guess, poor poets, is we maintain that the thing that I write, the play that I write, is mine until I say otherwise, right? And any profit I'm making is because I'm licensing the rights to this to someone to put on a play, and as a result, I participate in any income that is made with that property, right? And how that number is calculated is either on something called gross, which honestly 90% of the theater happening in the world and that the writer's paid for, and the writer's alive to be paid for, is paid on the gross, meaning for every ticket that's sold, you're getting some percentage of that. And this is a very old practice. There's a great book called Shakespeare's Money that talks about how Shakespeare made money. And, he was a partner in the theater that produced his plays. So he made like a penny for every 3 pennies that were made, right? So he made like a 33% gross.
Pretty good.
Pretty unheard of.
Pretty good for Shakespeare.
Yeah, no wonder. Yeah,
And it's not happened since.
Exactly.
He ruined it for the rest
The
of us.
producers figured it out quick.
And is there
So,
a standard? Is there a quote unquote standard percentage, or people negotiate?
Not exactly. I mean, generally you want to be making around 5%.
And
right?
then in musicals, it's 6%, but it's broken up between a composer, lyricist, and book writer. And the beauty of being paid on the gross is that it is first of all, you start making money as soon as the ticket is sold. And you see how much money, it's print, you can see everywhere what a show made in a week. And you'll be getting that percentage of that number you see.
Yeah, so it's more transparent because in order to know what that number is, they have to be, they meaning the producers, whoever's handling the property, have to be saying to you, this is how much money it made, and here's how much you're getting of it, right? So they pay you some amount, and it seems like they're lying. Well, then you can sue them because you have an agreement based on gross, and they're being fraudulent, right? Now, what's crept into the lexicon, or I guess into practice more consistently, are things like net profits, where producers decide that you'll make usually a higher percentage point of any proceeds made above a break-even amount, right? And so, an example of this would be, say that you've been promised the show takes $5 to make. Wouldn't that be amazing? They have to make $5 before you make a cent, right? Because in theory, these operating costs are covering things like labor, like paying the actors, keeping the lights on, things that should feel like bare essentials. Now, there's questions about what actually creeps into the definition of what it takes to run a show, right? Because what we've learned is that a lot of these producers have their own set fees and office fees built into these numbers that are hidden. Right, and our office fees aren't covered. Right, our assistants aren't covered. Our printing isn't covered. Right, this is a real concern.
Our bus fare isn't covered.
Yeah, bus fare's not covered. Nothing's covered. Lunches aren't covered. Right, so there's a question of like equity in those things, but also inside of that, there's new schemes like if you're talking about the top tier of the industry being like Broadway, there's the gray zone. So they're actually saying that break even is actually 120% of that number, right? So if you're making even 20% more profits, you still don't get any pay because that's what they've decided. They need to retain that buffer. So ideally everyone wants gross because gross is just the simplest, it's the clearest, and it's the most honest because it's really connected to what your property is valued at.
Yes.
Right. The value that you're creating, you participate in that value. End of story.
And
right.
typically this will happen in regional theaters across the country.
Yes,
and
so nonprofits tend to have to do that for a lot of reasons, right?
Paid on the gross.
Yes, because they're nonprofits, they shouldn't be concerned about net profits.
Right.
They make the shows they make and they should break even because they're a nonprofit that gets government funding or foundational funding to keep running. They should have a pretty much zero balance budget at the end of the year, right? So it's really when you go into the commercial spaces that you see these different schemes creep in, and the reasons they give are manifold. It's plentiful and manifold at the same time. I made that up.
You made a new word.
Right.
Yeah. Manifold. Manifold.
Right, but ultimately those things, it's very rare that they work out as we're learning. It's very rare they work out in the dramatist's favor.
Yeah, there's amortization, which is like a word that I'm always like, I hear it and I go, I don't know. But now,
but now you do.
Now I do.
You can tell us about it.
It started. It was a practice that started decades ago, but it's the finances of Broadway have changed so much that it means something very different than when it started. It's a way, honestly, for writers take the burden of paying back. Investors get paid back before the writers get their royalty. So it's gotten more aggressive over the years, the use of amortization. So your show could be making $2 million a week and you're like, hey, I got a hit show. But if the investors have not recouped yet, you will still receive minimums.
And the reason why this is complicated is that as a writer, you do not set the capitalization number of the show, meaning you don't decide how much money from investors is going to be taken in to make the show because there's no budget transparency, right? And so if your show, again, takes $5 to make, but the producers decide, well, we've got to capitalize this at $3,000, right? You have no idea where that $3,000 is going, really. But you're not going to make any money back until that $3,000 is paid back to wherever that $3,000 came from.
And 110% recouped, which is another term that has come up. It's not till the 3,000; it has to be 3,000 plus 300
before you get paid.
And also, it puts the writer in the position of taking on the risk of the producers and having to, we're repaying the investors as if we are the producers. And the risk we take is spending 5 to 7 years, whatever it takes, 3 to 7 to 10 years to write something basically on spec, except for an advance that we get, if we're fortunate and have producers or get a commission, in the hopes that the show will be produced and done. But then, so we don't get paid at the front end, and then we have to take a big cut in the middle. And often when it's recouping, that can be the hottest week of a show. So you will never get that money. If your show dips down and is now making $800,000 a week after 110% recoupment, you will never see the kind of money that you saw you could have seen when it was making $2 million a week.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yes.
So it really, you can, also there are royalty pools.
Well, so I want to go to that. I want to talk about royalty pools and minimums. And for those who don't know really what that entails, I'd just love to.
Yeah. And we're talking about, again, like the top 2% of the field, right? This is Broadway, and
it's
let's
Broadway,
say,
but it's,
touring, it's a bigger.
But I would argue that it all trickles down
Sure,
because
I agree.
it creates standards of everything.
And also it's important because there's this perception that once you're on Broadway, it's like ka-ching, the slot machine is paying out. And it is possible to be on Broadway, to have written a show, gotten commercial producers, opened on Broadway, run for 4 months, and never see a penny.
Right. Yeah. I know, it's tragic.
And it's also possible to have an off-Broadway hit that makes way more money than the Broadway hit that wins all the awards, right? That's very possible in this current economy because of these sorts of things we're talking about. But let's talk about, you said minimums and what else?
Minimums and royalty pools. For those who don't know, let's start with the concept of the royalty pool. Who typically is in that pool?
Well, I wish I could say it was as much fun as a swimming pool.
Right.
It's a royalty pool where you sit on a throne and you're in the pool. A royalty pool is, again, it can be, if the show is very profitable, it can be good for writers because it's it's a little complicated for me now. I'm trying to explain it. But the show has to reach a certain threshold in order for the pool to kick in. So if the show doesn't reach that threshold, you get no royalty. You get a minimum.
And the minimum is something you negotiate or something that is a standardized minimum?
Well, there is a standardized minimum in the APC.
Yes.
Right?
The approved production contract.
Yes, the approved production contract, yes. But first of all, anything in your contract can be negotiated.
Right.
Right? It's a combination of where you're willing to draw the line in terms of how you value your work, how good your agent is, right? How willing the producer is, But minimums are a set number that a writer is guaranteed to be paid per week.
Yes.
And yes, there was a baseline. I think what's the base number? Is it 2,000? Yeah. But again, keep in mind these numbers are very old. But most people, and I would encourage anyone to make sure that your minimum is as high as possible before you agree to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But so the royalty pool gets kicked in once the show reaches a certain amount of money, but if it doesn't, no royalty pool.
And would that be the
minimums.
The royalty pools kick in?
I don't.
Okay.
It's not based on recoupment. I think it's on how much gross.
Gross. Yes.
And also, writers share the royalty pool with designers, directors, choreographers. So the more people in it, even if you get a bigger percentage of the pie, the pie gets smaller. Right. So it's not very healthy for anybody in that pool. And writers as the creators really ought ought not have to be in the pool.
So also particularly, sorry to interrupt you, you were going to say.
No.
I was saying particularly, I hesitate to use the word criminal, but unsavory practice is often writers are asked in shows that are quote unquote struggling, whatever that really means.
Yeah,
right?
this is the third piece of the trifecta of
like,
not getting paid.
Yeah, also who decides it's struggling is the producers, not you, but writers are often asked to waive their royalties.
Which means you get $0 for that week.
And when you get when the reason why writers are asked first is because you actually, this is important for people to know, is that the choice you make affects every other creative participant in that royalty pool. If the writer waives their royalties, everyone else waives their royalties.
Right. Okay.
They are tied to what the writer does.
And then there is something called deferment, where writers can be asked to defer their royalties or their minimums.
Well, you never defer minimums. You can waive your minimums, or you can have something called reduced minimums, which literally makes no sense.
Oxymoron.
But no such thing as a reduced minimum. Minimum's a minimum. But you know, the point of a minimum is that that's what you're guaranteed payment of. And keep in mind that's pre-tax money, that's pre-commissions.
No, but on the weeks when you're asked to waive, you get zero.
You get zero. Exactly.
You get zero. You do
Because
not
we
get. You
have-
get zero minimums.
Yeah.
Speaking of people that we've heard from who have been on Broadway and made zero money, that's probably
It's
what
the
has happened,
trifecta
right?
of amortization, royalty
Yeah.
pool, and
Yeah.
being asked to waive. And the thing is, the thing that writers are told again and again is, do you want your show to happen?
Right.
You know, it's sort of like, you know, playing the piano and saying, but we're not going to pay you, but you can sell your CD outside the club afterwards.
And then we'll take 40% of that CD, by the way. Yeah. I mean, I will say I've literally never met a writer who deferred their royalties and it actually came back to them.
So they basically
Personally.
waived them,
Yeah, I literally every writer I know who's waived them has never seen that money ever again. That's the writers I know.
Let's talk a little bit about what kind of power you would like to see writers have over any of these things, and how that, this is a leading question, because I really think we've heard from people and talked to people who have found strength in numbers. Even though we're not allowed to collectively bargain, there is strength in numbers in how people decide to do things or not do things.
It's not about a strength that we need to have. It's acknowledging the strength you already have, right? So I think what's happened is like people have internalized this gratefulness. They've internalized this idea that they're replaceable. They've internalized this idea that like all we're doing is just expressing things. There's no skill set involved here. There's no expertise involved here. Why should I ask for more money for my literal skill set? You know. So I think for me, and the reason why I think the numbers works is because that's people betting on themselves and saying, actually, I don't think you're going to find as good a writer for me for this project. And you can go ahead and hire a person who's underqualified, who's going to take the sack of nickels you offer them, and then you're going to see your product fail. You're going to lose millions of dollars. You're going to get sued, probably by someone, right? Let them have that journey. This is what I'm saying. We sit at a very important place in the chain of action that leads to a work happening, right? And I think we have to like sit in that power and also know that sometimes no is the best thing to say in this moment, you know? And if you're talented enough, one opportunity doesn't come by, they keep coming by. It's not it's not a big enough field that there's like 50,000 people behind you trying to get your job. And we all just need to like start believing that, you know, really internalizing that and being willing to stand up and say, and sometimes it's difficult. We have these agents who are sometimes friends, sometimes not friends, you know, and sometimes they're our first agent, sometimes they're a new agent, and saying to them, like, I'm concerned that you're devaluing my skill set, and that there's a disjunct between us about what I think I should be earning here versus what's happening. But really also part of the safety is numbers, not what you said, but power in numbers is knowledge sharing. We have to say to each other, stay away from that producer because this is what's going to happen based on what I've heard from this person, this person, this person. And that's not collective bargaining, that's just knowledge sharing. Right?
Also, like, I was in this position and I did this, and so I got that. And you're like, oh, wow, okay, if you did it, maybe I could do it. You know, it is really empowering each other. And as I said, we're in these silos, and the Dramatists Guild is here to like put us in a room and be able to talk to each other. About it.
The two takeaways I have from this conversation and also our conversation earlier in the summer is know your worth.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to be willing in any negotiation to walk away and for that opportunity to go elsewhere. And that's okay. But you have to be really willing to stand by your work, stand by yourself, and not take something that you don't feel is
A Faustian bargain rarely works out. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So if you're like, well, I have to give up all of this and this feels awful, but at least I don't.
Yeah. I think it's not just know your worth, but grow your worth, right?
Ew.
In that, in the sense that what has value is your skill set. So grow the skill set, right? I think all the time about Stephen Sondheim, wanted to, of course, his mentor was Oscar Hammerstein, but he didn't want to do West Side Story because it was like, I don't want to be a lyricist, And Oscar Hammerstein was like, listen, kid, you have an opportunity to be in the room with some of the best minds working. It's going to work out. And it definitely clearly worked out, And I do think that there are times when you take that job that doesn't pay you the premium you think you deserve because there's something about this experience that's going to add to your skill set.
Absolutely.
It's going to add to value.
It's not always getting the top dollar. It is getting the
Yes.
top thing that for you.
Yeah, for you. That's
Yes.
going to keep you moving the form forward so that you can help others move it forward. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
So I do think it's like people have to stop thinking that dramatic writing or being a dramatist is like vomiting on a paper plate. Like I'm saying it's a skill.
Yeah.
To make a show requires more than me tapping into my laptop. We all know this. Mm-hmm. You have to know how to identify the talent that can deliver the work. You have to know how to talk to actors. You have to figure out how to identify the right director. You have hiring approval. People forget this.
That's another thing, is using the rights you do have.
Yeah.
Don't let them go.
Yeah.
Do not let them go.
Yeah.
No.
You actually don't have to take producer's notes. They sign a contract where, you know what I'm saying? That can be its own sticky wicket for you interpersonally, but the contract that they sign is they will produce the play that you begin rehearsals with. Right? Mm-hmm. So that's the thing to remember. The pressures you're feeling to do things, you don't work for them. You literally don't work for producers when you're a dramatist. They are in collaboration with you to create a production based on something that you are in control of, which is the original idea in the IP.
Yeah, somebody once approached me about writing a project and said, well, we'll be co-writers, right? Because I'll be giving you notes.
Yeah, and you have to go.
And I said, oh, no, I'm so sorry. I just can't work that way. But thank you so much and good luck with your project.
Yeah, it's insane.
But that's what I mean by not only just not compromising your standards for what what you have. You have to know what you need.
And people don't even know that they have these rights.
Yeah.
They don't even know that people get paired with director. I see young players get paired with these directors, and I'm like, but you get to say no,
Yeah.
Yeah.
They can't force you to work with someone you don't want to work with.
Yeah.
I also want to talk about, since we're talking about the whole process of starting from saying yes, mm-hmm. and hopefully getting to where your show is on any stage, the interim period where everyone's getting a paycheck but us. And we talked about this a little bit in the first episode about you're hoping that when they're passing out the paychecks and you're in the rehearsal room and you've been there and you're doing rewrites and you're advising on X, Y, and Z, that you would get paid, but you are in fact not.
Right. There is actually no good reason why writers should not be paid like every single other person in the room. We own our copyright, but we deliver the copyright, and then we're there 8 hours a day, and then after rehearsal, and not being paid, and it's unsustainable for not being paid for workshops and not being paid for rehearsals. And if there's room in the budget for every single other person, there should be room in the budget for the writers.
Yeah, it's about a conversation of what does being a dramatist entail. Yes, it's about creating the work, typing things into a laptop, printing them out. But the truth is, I'm not typing in that room. Mm-hmm. I'm in that room answering questions that the director can't answer, sometimes for the director itself. I'm there sort of maintaining a vision for people. I'm really, those things those need to be compensated, because otherwise and this is, I take a kind of slightly cattier approach in the sense that I remind people constantly when I'm not paid that my presence is a courtesy, which means I'm not beholden to the schedule. I'll show up when I want to show up. And if you would like me, because I could be driving an Uber right now and making more money, truly. No shade on Uber drivers. In fact, sometimes I want to, because, so if there's a desire for me to be here that on your terms, I'm going to need a fee for that. Or I'm going to come and go when I need to, and you can't guarantee my presence here.
That's how do we address that on a industry-wide level? Because I think it has become part of the culture, and it's very hard to change that. How do we make that more of a priority for people to consider?
Well, it's about talking about what we all do. I think it's very hard for a lot of programs, a lot of graduate programs don't really give. Back up. So I taught for a long time in the graduate level, and I was shocked with my colleagues by how little practical experience writers and dramatists were given, right? And I would say to them, 80% of this job is being in a room with people. It's managing people. It's being able to talk about your ideas. We're spending so much time writing and doing workshops that these students are leaving here, getting their first productions, and being completely blown over, right? They're walking into like a no man's land. They've not been prepped for it, and they fumble and they freak out. They get bad reviews, hear from them again. And so writers have to start talking about, it's about more than writing, guys, right? It's about what is a writer looking for in a casting session, right? I once had someone say to me, a producer, it was like my first production actually, and I was attracted to this one actor for this one role, and then the producer turned to me and went, well, I think the character's really like this. And I had to turn to her and say, I made this person up out of my mind. Yeah. Why would you know what the character was?
Absolutely.
But I think the average young writer thinks, oh my God, of course, you're right. And it's like, no, there you are being disassociated again from your work.
Yeah,
right.
And in marketing, I see that happen a lot.
Oh my
Actors
God,
and writers talk all about that. It's like, that's not my play. That's not my musical. I don't know what you think that is. And there's sort of mysterious thing about not understanding, the market and not understanding advertising. But if it represents what you're going for or not,
Also, you buy tickets probably, right? We are consumers of the work on some level, and it's like we know what sells or doesn't.
It is our worth and our value there, and I think I don't think we should be afraid to ask.
Yeah, and also just name it. I think it's about being willing. Everyone's afraid of offending people, and I find that as we were speaking to a young writer in the last year who had a very difficult situation, and this situation began because the writer was upset at the Guild for asking for money, right? And then in the end, this writer who's incredibly talented made no money to even give to the Guild, and then somehow it became our fault that they didn't make money. When actually, as we talked to this person, we were like, well, your agent failed you here, the producers lied to you in this way, your collaborators failed you in this way, right? It's like, but you didn't, and the response was, I didn't know, right? And it's like, right, you didn't know, but then your instinct was to turn on other writers. It was to turn on your colleagues. And actually what we need to train people to do is seek each other for resources.
I would say it's a terrible thing, but when I was dating, the advice was like, if it feels weird, it's weird. So if it feels weird,
it's weird.
We are here.
Yeah.
We're here.
Yes.
It feels weird. I feel uncomfortable. I don't understand. I should be feeling this, but I feel that. Call and speak. Talk to another writer.
Yeah.
Talk to a writer with more experience.
We've all been in weird experiences.
1,000 ways.
We know how it's supposed to go, Yeah. And the truth is, if you can get to the level that I think a lot of us are happy to be at the council, it's because we've had good experiences. We know what a healthy creative experience is. That's why we joined the council. I feel like, honestly, a lot of the councils, people who just were driven to it through trauma,
Well, it's great. Community is great. And sharing our knowledge, because that's what we really, nobody understands playwrights like other playwrights, writers like other writers. And what we go through and what we need. And
so I guess almost to your point, then maybe it's about like, really, I want to remove shame from the equation. It's okay to, like you said, it's okay to say it feels weird. You know, you're not a lesser writer, a lesser professional because you feel uncomfortable, but I think that's what people prey on in these sort of.
And even
situations.
like acknowledging, like, I feel like I should be grateful. I feel like I can't. Well, I feel like I can't. It's okay to acknowledge that too, but talk to somebody about it. Talk to another writer when you're in the middle of that shame spiral or fear spiral. It's good.
I do want to back up a little bit to, let's take a little sip of water.
I know, so I'm just yapping over here.
You gotta turn the lid. There you go.
Thanks for the excellent water.
I know. God, the one thing about this podcast, they give you good water.
That's what I've heard. That's what drew me.
This podcast is brought to you by
Wait, can you get
cold water.
Cold water. Oh, you want some too?
No,
I
she
just want to take it out of the picture.
Yeah. Cold water. It's what's for dinner. I'm a playwright. And this is my dinner. It's cold.
I get 99 of my percentage nutrients as a playwright from water.
Cold water.
This is what you can afford.
Brought to you by amortization. Yeah, exactly.
So I want to back up a little bit to something you referred to that I think also bears repeating or explanation for the listener who might not know what it is. So you referred to a writer who was mad that they had to pay the Dramatists Guild. And I want us to take the opportunity to talk about assessments, what that means, what the commitment is from a writer who is in the position to be assessed by the Guild, which means someone who's working under what we call first-class productions, Broadway and national tours, first national tours.
Yeah. Gosh, what are assessments? Well, assessments are a thing that you have to worry about in the Guild if you are extremely lucky, right? And that you're a writer who is having what we would call a first-class production, which means on Broadway, right? Do they count?
They do count
Tours?
first national tours.
Yeah, so first national tours also count as, and the Guild, and part of what justifies this kind of nominal 2%, or I think it's 3%
2% for plays, 3% for
musicals, is that you would be at that point using the APC certification process, which is proprietary to the Guild. Meaning the Guild will have looked at your contract and certified that you were getting what the Guild determined was a financially advantageous industry standard or minimum. Mm-hmm. At the very minimum, you're getting that in your deal. Mm-hmm. And that the number, again, the amount is 2% or 3% of your income. So not gross of the show, right? But of gross of what you're pulling down from it. And if you're getting a minimum, it's 2 to 3% of that minimum. And it has been an interesting. Historically, there's been like sticker shock or something. How would you describe it?
Yeah, I mean, just because of the realities of, since writers are not paid throughout the process, usually, I can just speak to myself, you arrive at opening night at the finish line of opening night broke because you have not been paid for a long time. And unless you're driving an Uber, you're going to rehearsals and have very little money. And then all of a sudden you're like, and I'm giving 10% to an agent, maybe 5% to a lawyer. And now the Guild is asking for more. So it can be a sticker shock. Yeah.
And I think the perception is that the Guild hasn't done things to me the way that my agent has, or the way that. But the truth is, you're benefiting from this industry standard set by the advocacy of playwrights going all the way back to like Eugene O'Neill, right? So in some ways, you're tithing to the profession. And hopefully in your way participating in the further maintenance of these standards. And I think we've learned, I think it's been sort of confirmed for us by insiders, that deals not on the using the certification of the Guild actually wind up yielding the author way less.
Yeah.
So it's a strange kind of funny thing because you're haggling over a 2 or 3% that you wouldn't even have anywhere near.
Yeah, you're not better off.
Yeah, the saving,
You'd
be making far less money anyway without that.
In my conversation with David Henry Hwang in another episode, he talked about it in these terms, that it's not about paying backwards, it's really paying into what the Guild is doing to fight for us now.
That's right.
That's right.
And I think it bears repeating why this is important, not just a measure of goodwill, but that it is actually going towards the continual fight for our rights and against exploitation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like the talkback as itself wouldn't exist without this process, right? We wouldn't have any. We wouldn't be here as a guild probably, because it is a part of what keeps the guild going.
Open.
We wouldn't be providing space. We wouldn't. None of the resources a guild member receives would happen without the participation of, again, that very top 2% of our field.
That's right. That's right. And one thing I did want to say is like that it's a faulty misperception that like, okay, you guys, won us rights over 100 years ago. Why should we pay you for that? Because the fight is ongoing. The fight is daily. Yeah. The fight and guild members and the guild work in ways very concrete ways to fight for subsidiary rights, to fight for our authorial rights, creative rights. So it is an ongoing effort, and I would say that without the Guild, it's like a game over. I mean, we are the only organization of writers for writers, and nobody cares about us the way we care about us. They just don't. For the health of our profession, for the health of the industry, and for people who are coming after us.
And I think people can't forget that the market is a dynamic thing. So to say like, you got us rights 100 years ago is kind of ridiculous, because the truth is every day various players are finding new ways to cheat you out of what you think you deserve, right? They build new models, new ideas. I mean, if we think about even like the way the gray zone has been deployed, what that means, amortization, the way that's deployed now is not the way it was deployed back then. The way that people hide fees. That's all new, right?
Yeah, you used to be able to look at a budget and say like, okay, I get it, 6% of that, and now it's very opaque.
Yeah, and again, if the news every year is that this is the most well-attended and highest grossing Broadway season ever, and that is not being reflected in the livelihoods of the makers, that money's going somewhere, right? And that's really the question. That's what we're following.
I think it's also interesting that we have talked about, the way, speaking of the way the industry has changed, the way new play development has changed. And so we find ourselves developing these plays or musicals. Musicals take longer, traditionally, but for years and years, and then you're still in that no man's land of not getting paid up until hopefully you're getting paid when the tickets are sold. But that in the old days, a producer would decide to produce a musical, for example, and then take it out of town, and you would be earning money because you would see the tickets being sold as it's on its way to Broadway.
Right, so workshops have replaced out of town. Even though we do go out of town, workshops have replaced what used to be an out-of-towner, which is like open it up cold and fix it like hell.
Yeah, and so I think that's an interesting perspective to have just historically, because I know that a lot of us think, why is it taking so long to go through all of these readings and 29-hour readings and workshops, and you're still not getting paid as the writer and the person who was there when the page was completely blank. So that's, sometimes I think it's helpful to get some context around it.
It has changed. I mean, my dad was a theater writer, and he made really good money. And some of his shows ran for 3 years, some of them ran for a year, but he got wealthy writing musicals.
When he would get an idea,
yes.
Then how long typically?
I don't know. Gosh.
From there to the production?
yeesh, I don't know.
Probably
3
not.
years maybe. Less time.
Less than
Yeah.
7.
Less than 7.
Yeah, the standard now is 5. They tell you that when you sign on to a job.
Oh, 100%.
Yes. I mean, I will say that, this is a whole other podcast, but there are some significant kind of structural changes everyone's sort of noticing and bemoaning in the field. One of them is the disappearance of like new play development spaces, like the Lark is what I was thinking, but also Sundance. Even O'Neill, they say, is in trouble. Every summer there's an article about how O'Neill's in trouble, and these were very significant playgrounds for not just development of work, but development of talent that were ultimately funded by foundations and sometimes government grants. And actually, for example, last year, not this season, but 2004, every single play that was nominated for Best Play had originated in a nonprofit. Similarly, this year, Purpose was started at Steppenwolf. It was a commission from something called the Drew Hines Foundation, which was a foundation that gave money to commission to a nonprofit theater my play, right? So even Kimberly Bellflower's work, I think she wrote that maybe in grad school, but had this like very significant life in the region and in universities, and that money flowing in there is not individual investors, right? That's very sacred money in some ways, right? And I think that these things have all fed a commercial system that when you get here ultimately treats writers pretty unfairly, right? But what's happening is that because all those things dried up and nonprofits themselves are struggling, that foundational money's there, I think no one in the commercial space realizes that the well that they're drawing from is drying out, right? Like they're not putting money back into development, right? They're not actually encouraging new talent. They're not kind of allowing, commissions. I feel like I came up during a really important kind of boom moment for playwriting. Every single theater had money to commission young writers, and that was it wasn't a lot of money, but for like a 25-year-old, it meant you would write a play. You know what I mean? And I wonder now, like, where those folks go. I mean, for a while, television was sucking them up, but that's now contracting in the field. I just don't really know what people do to make a living as a writer. I think you'd probably work a survival job much longer, but even then, how does the work get better? How do you put people in situations where they're learning how to work with actors? I remember once wrote a play like, a single tear goes down her eye or something like that. And the actress turned to me and was like, I absolutely hate you. Do you understand? But she broke down for me. She's like, that is an insane thing to ask a person to do every single night. And I would have never learned.
I hope you told her, I want to see that single tear 8 times
I said to her,
a week.
you're fired. Yeah, I fired her on the spot.
Good.
But that was a huge learning moment for me, was going like, oh wait, actors every night have to replicate this show.
I know, yes.
And
I've
made
had
not
actors
get
be
that.
like, that's a mouthful, I can't say that. And I was like, but, okay.
Yeah, right, but I learned that because I was in a safe, random, I wasn't in rehearsal for the play. That's that kind of education. That's a part of what that affects what the product winds up being, and it's just not there, and no one's quite acknowledging that, and no one's rushing to support it.
I
or
talk
fix it.
about process all the time and how important it is, and how we've become so result oriented that a lot of times people just want it to be leap from your laptop onto the stage without the kind of time and space and collaboration that is necessary.
Right, and that time and space takes money. It takes resources. I remember Lynn Nottage a few years ago bemoaning, she's like, I think we live in a first draft culture where everyone writes a first draft and that's the one they want to get done. I'm like, of course we do, because you gotta do a full year of Ubers to get to time to sit down and write the second draft now, because you don't have Sundance flying you out to Utah and paying your rent for a month so you can sit there and make it better. We just don't have that anymore. And I think we're going to see the effects of that even more.
I talked to Lloyd Suh about this in our interview because, as you know, he was so vital at the Lark, Mayi Writers Lab, second generation. He talked about how it's really time to build now. So I'm going to circle into this other feeling of that I'd love to share with you, and also have you bounce back. What gives you hope in the midst of all of this? Because it's a difficult time, but I really think that as much information as we could share, we can also share inspiration, which you certainly do for me every day I talk to you both.
Your pottery, I mean, that's...
I know, that's my hobby.
No.
My directed my
No, I'm
Etsy
sorry.
page.
Sorry.
No. I think that's a great question. I guess I have a lot of hope in how many people are talking more openly about their financial world. You know, we were on a council meeting yesterday where like three incredibly heavy hitter playwrights to who I looked up to coming up confessed to some pretty gnarly stuff that was happening to them, and I was like, wow, you know, if these people aren't safe, no, we don't stand a chance.
Right. You don't want anyone to go through it, but it does give you some solace to know that you're not alone.
Exactly.
And that together,
And
by sharing the information,
we're all ready to
right,
talk about the problem.
we might be able to
That's
help
the
each other.
beginning. That's
Yep.
the beginning of organizing. Yeah.
I echo that. I do think the more we talk and the more information we share, and like the less like, again, the shame of like, I can't believe I let that happen to me. I feel like a sucker. I don't think I should have read it. I should have not. You know, it's just like sharing it, and information is knowledge is power. Knowledge is power.
I want to say too, I am experiencing a lot of young artists who are, I know I just brought the first draft culture thing, but I'm meeting like young artists who have very big, impossible ideas that they know they're not going to immediately make money from. Does that make sense? I have hope about that. I have hope that people are realizing that like whatever they make, you'll never be paid enough for it. You know, so you might as well make the thing you really want to make.
You gotta make the thing, because also the thing is always the best.
Yes, exactly.
That
and
thing
it
is
will
always the best. You know, I've chased, prestigious this or that, and it's never the thing. The thing is always like, oh my God, this is so weird. Can I do this? Well, I'm gonna try.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
And I think I'm feeling people turn on. I feel like for a while everyone was getting pitched like, do you want to make a musical about Wheel of Fortune? And you're like, what? Like, everything was
Why?
like.
What have you heard? Is that happening?
Amanda, it's
Are
my
they
job.
seeing
Back
people?
up. No, but what I mean is like, there's a rise again. Exactly. Who's the producer on that? Can I give you a meeting? But what you're feeling is people actually working on original ideas. You know, I thought that was what was kind of so great about the story of Stereophonic, or even O'Mary this year. I know we don't want to talk about. I know you told me not to talk about shows, but I'm just saying. But what it is, I'm seeing a lot of things like that, where people aren't like rushing or being tricked into adapting a movie.
I was talking to a very nice man who was telling me about AI and how it can be useful for theater writers, and because it's been very useful for filmmakers, and he was talking about, and he was very knowledgeable, and there are some ways that it could be useful, but he was like, well, you can check and like, what's in the zeitgeist, what's the, what are people going to see? And I was like, stop, right? Because when someone writes a play, it's like, I hate my mother and I have to write this play. And like, it doesn't tick off any boxes of what people need to see. Yeah. It doesn't, there's no, demographic, it's just sort of like the thing they've got to write, and that's what plays are, and musicals, a musical, whatever, so that's the thing.
Yeah.
I Hate My Mother, the musical.
Or Wheel of Fortune.
Or Wheel of
That's
Fortune.
your way into Wheel of Fortune. Ryan Seacrest hates his mother, Vanna White is his mother.
So good.
Someone call me.
Anybody.
Anybody call me.
Thank you so much to all our guests this season. This podcast is supported by the Dramatists Guild Foundation, a nonprofit organization that fosters playwrights, composers, lyricists, and librettists at all stages of their careers. DGF supports these writers with financial grants, free space to create new works, and career resources and programs. If you are a dramatist seeking support or are a lover of theater who wants to support the future of storytelling, visit dgf.org or follow at DGFound to learn more. Talkback is executive produced by me, Christine Toy Johnson, and edited and recorded by Bruce Johnson. Our music is by Andrea Daly. We're distributed by the Broadway Podcast Network. As always, to be continued.